Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Angus IJB Audit Committee. I've just got a formal statement to read out here. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Angus Integrated Joint Board Audit Committee. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. Thank you. Item 1, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Nicky Worrell.
Thank you, Liz. Item 2, declarations of interest and statements of transparency. I'll just look around and right, there's nobody indicating, so there's no conflicts. So we'll move on to item 3, which is the minutes, including action points. So 3A is the minutes of the previous meeting and of 26th of June 2024. We've all had a chance to read through it, so I'm not going to go through it page by page, but if anybody has any points of disagreement with the minutes, please indicate. I don't see any.
Just come in, could you maybe check that she's got the declarations of interest?
Right, so I'll just, nobody's objected to the minutes. Haley, hi there.
Hi.
I've been through the declarations of interest items, so I'd have to go back and ask you because you joined after that. You don't have anything? Do you have anything to declare?
No, I don't.
Okay, thanks, Haley.
Okay,
and welcome.
thanks.
And welcome. Item 3B is the actual action points of the minute of 26th of June. So I don't know if you have anything to say, Sandy, on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll just pick up a few of these. We've got a number that have gone green, which is helpful. They'll disappear by the next meeting, and a lot of them are linked to papers that you've seen today. So I'll just reference a few. The very first one, we've got a vacancy on the Audit Committee, as members will be aware. The vacancy we have right now is effectively replacing Peter Drury, an NHS Tayside non-exec who left a few months ago. We are going to seek a nomination for replacing Peter at this afternoon's IJB meeting, and hopefully that will be successful. I think we can maybe just note here, Andrew, that in this afternoon's paper, we also note that Nicky Worrell is leaving her post. So at some point, we'll have another vacancy on the Audit Committee that we'll fill later on in this calendar year. The second point, internal audit follow-up actions. Again, I'll mention it here, but it ties into something that you're seeing later on the agenda. We have pushed that back. It's covered in there's an agenda note about it, and it's partly because of other factors around that paper that we've pushed the internal audit follow-up paper back to our next meeting, which actually will probably be in October. And then I just want to pick up on the two red ones a bit further down. This is on the second page of the action points. The first red one talks about the review of the Chief Finance Officer role, something we do every year, and the potential inclusion of that in our audit plan for 24-25. I have been in contact with Jocelyn in terms of our internal audit plan, and we are just going to kind of review. We'll do it after the meeting. We've started to speak about it already. We're going to review the risks associated with that piece of work, and is it really something that we need to actually have our internal auditors reviewing, or is it something that is at the more lower risk end of things, and maybe we don't need to do that? So I'll feed back the outcome of that discussion with Jocelyn and her team next time we meet, and that will hopefully close that item out. And the last one is regarding an outstanding governance actions issue about lead partner services. That has been an ongoing issue. You can tell that obviously by the date, but it's also been on some of our audit actions for quite some time. This is nearing completion now. I didn't write it in here, but it feels like it's been nearing completion for a wee while. And what sometimes happens is we feel we're getting there with something, and then other bits of it don't quite come together. So we have got some work to do on that to put a comprehensive position in regarding our lead partner arrangements, covering things like financial issues, planning issues, risks and governance issues. So we will still get that back to the Audit Committee as soon as we can. I'm sure that will happen by the turn of the calendar year and hopefully by October. So Chair, I'm happy to take any questions, but otherwise hopefully that's a helpful update.
Thank you, Sandy. Throw it open to the meeting. Jill?
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to the last action point, just in relation to the lead partner, and just to note that we do have lead partner reports coming to the October IJB, and the forum across the region in terms of the 3 health and social care partnerships is progressing. They will consider the SBAR around the governance arrangements at their next meeting.
Thanks for that clarification, Jill. Has anybody else got any things to raise on the action points? No, thank you very much. I shall move on to item number 4, which is the 2024-25 Internal Audit Plan Progress Report. So I'll pass that over to Jocelyn.
Yep, thank you, Chair. This is quite a brief item because we have the full 24-25 plan later on in the agenda. So this report sets out progress with the non-discretionary elements of the plan to date, and we don't have any relevant partner organisation internal audits to report at the moment. Excuse me. Just to point out, we have made an adjustment to the planning cycle, and the 24-25 annual internal audit report is now in this year's plan. Historically, we always put it into the following year's plan, which didn't really make a lot of sense. So now the plan for the year sits within that year's plan. So Appendix 1 sets out the progress. And since the last audit committee, we've completed our 24-25 planning work. We're continuing with our audit management work, which will be ongoing throughout the year. And the final annual report 23-24 with management responses has been finalised, and that's at agenda item 6. That's all I wanted to point out, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn, for that clarification. Anybody got any questions for? No, seeing shaking heads. Right, so that's fine. Nothing there, Jocelyn, for you. Thanks very much. Move on to item 5. Again, that's the one with a note on it. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Sorry, point of order here. I should have gone to the recommendations rather than just rush on. So the recommendation item, paragraph 2 is we're asked to note the work undertaken relating to the 24-25 internal audit plan. Duly noted. Thank you very much. So, back to item 5. That's the internal audit report. Follow actions. There's a note there. But Sandy, if you maybe want to talk to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so this kind of ties in with something I was just saying to you a few minutes ago in terms of the action points. This is a report that we pretty much have always brought to every single audit committee meeting. And I would have been planning to bring it to this meeting today. We set out some plans to change some of the categorisation in that report when we last met in June. That just took a bit of extra time. The annual internal audit report, the next item on the agenda, also had some comments to make regarding this report and our follow-up actions, and I felt we needed to reflect on them. But I have said that also in the note on the agenda, we have had some operational issues. That includes staff turnover. My colleague Riona Spanky moved on to another job, and her replacement has only just come in during July, and also got married in July, so we had struggled a wee bit in terms of capacity, and I just felt bringing all those factors together rather than rush to get the report to the committee, and given that we will have another committee in October to look at the accounts, we were best to defer it for one meeting. I don't think we're missing out too much in terms of you're losing the thread of governance on that one, Chair. So hopefully everybody's okay with that.
Right, for the meeting, is everybody okay with that? Moving that item on to the additional October meeting? Yes, I don't see any nods all around. Thanks very much. So I think we can just move straight on to item 6, which is the actual substantive item on this entire agenda. It's the internal audit report. The 2023-24 audit, internal audit report, as mentioned by Jocelyn earlier on. So again, I'll hand over to you, Jocelyn, to summarise the key points on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So the committee has seen this report already in draft at the June meeting, and the version you had then didn't have the management responses to the recommendations included. So I won't go through all the detail again, because we did talk about the key themes then, and I went through quite a few of those, and also confirmed my positive opinion on the 23-24 year. So I guess just to remind members, that the ICE and the annual report together provide assurance on the overall systems of internal control. As I say, we have had management responses to the recommendations, and we are content with those responses. I feel that management have addressed those really carefully and thought about considered their responses. I did just want to mention the very first one, and it ties in with the last agenda item and the comments from Sandy already. So, we talked about the fact that some of these governance improvement actions have been outstanding for quite some time. Just to say that we made that, we talked about this recommendation very much within the context that we recognise the complex operating environment and understand the reasons for that. So this recommendation really focused on the impact in the control environment if key improvements aren't being actioned, and really just emphasising that need for continued robust monitoring. So I'm pleased to say that management have agreed that progress with actions will be reported through the Chair's assurance reports, with a system in place to identify which of those are really key and allow that prioritisation, and also that the audit follow-up protocol will be reviewed. So I think this is something we'll continue to monitor in 24-25, but I'm satisfied that it's been, it's really been taken very seriously, and that this area is being progressed. And I think, Chair, that's all I wanted to point out from the report. I don't know if Sandy wants to comment at all.
Sandy?
Yeah, thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we have seen the content before, as Jocelyn has outlined. We made one or two tweaks to some bits of wording. I've covered that in the cover report, but nothing substantive. And of course, as Jocelyn said, we've put our management responses in. I think the action point 1, which is on page 34 of the PDF files and page 18 of the report itself, that is the one that Jocelyn has referred to. And we did give that, as Jocelyn has said, we gave that quite a lot of consideration. And we thought, we need to do things about some of the points that the auditors have made, and we are starting to work on those already. The validation of how far we're getting on and have we completed actions and we completed those things robustly is all things that I think will be important and worthwhile for us to do. So we've set out commitments to do that. There's the other action points. There's one on action point, I think it's page 38 of the PDF file. That's action point 2 about adult support and protection. We've got action points in there, not because of this report, but maybe because of similar reasons that this report is flagged up. We've already started to move some of the, increase the frequency of some of our reporting, and hopefully that feels okay to audit committee members. It's what we set out to the partnership, but we have taken on board the other observations under our second and third responses of them, and they will appear in our next annual update on that, rather than doing it every 2 years. The third action point, which is on page 41, just remind myself which one that was about strategic risks. Again, it's helpful to have kind of an external view of our assessments of our risks. We assess our risks regularly through our clinical care professional governance forums. That group meets, I think, Jill, that looks at this every 2 months. That looks at the strategic risks every 2 months. But it's helpful to have an external view of these, and obviously they've picked up on this particular risk regarding commission service providers and unmet need, and just asked us to cast a more detailed eye on that one, and that we will do. We hope to do that at our September CCPG meeting. And the fourth action point is on page 42 of the PDF file and page 26 of the report. This one, again, it's helpful to have this observation made by our internal auditors. It's also, an area where I think we have to say we haven't done what we previously agreed to do. We previously agreed to highlight whistleblowing issues through staff partnership forum and bring them through other reports back to the IJB. We haven't done that. We will do that, and the fact that our internal auditors have picked us up, picked us up on this. That's not what I meant to say. Pick this up is helpful. Because it's a reminder to us that when we set out that we will do things in our, through the internal audit management responses, we need to make sure they get done, not just in the immediate year after, but in the subsequent years, because they all form part of the overall governance framework that we are building and need to sustain in the IJB. So the recommendations, I think, in terms of the recommendations and the responses, I feel hopefully provide a proportionate response to these things and allow us to put in place things that will make the governance structures better going forward. So, obviously, thanks to the internal auditors for the report, and hopefully the IJB Audit Committee are comfortable with where we are. But I'm sure between Jocelyn and myself we can deal with any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Before I pass on to any questions, it's just that I did note the fact that going forward, it appears that the recommendation that the Chair's assurance report at every IJB will be a more rigorous tool in the future in which to highlight issues. The feeling I'm getting is to highlight issues in a more robust way than it is currently at the moment. So as the one that gives that assurance report, I'll be quite keen to see how that develops in the future and what role I will play in that one. Given that most of this work goes on internally, away from the kind of the audit committee itself. So, I mean, I'm just really guided by the staff. So I'll see how that goes. I'll wait with interest. The other thing is that, probably the checking up that we've done what we said we're going to do needs tightened up a bit more, I guess. Take that point on board. So, having said that little bit, can I just go around the room? Jill, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It's just to give committee a level of assurance in relation to the whistleblowing. So from an NHS perspective, we do report that on a quarterly basis through NHS and their staff governance committee, and that does go up to NHS Tayside Board. But I absolutely acknowledge the need for IJB to be cited on that for both partner organisations, but just to give a level of assurance that that is in place.
Thank you, Jill. Georgie?
Yeah, thank you. Just to come back on something you said, Andrew, was about the whistleblowing example. Do we, or are we happy we have something in place to ensure that when we actually have something to do, we have a way of checking that it's done, so we don't need audit to come and tell us that we've not done it?
I don't know who best answer that, Sandy? Jill?
Yeah, Chair, I'll pick that one up. George, it's a great question. And it's a really difficult one because we commit to doing lots and lots of things. We've had, I mean, if I just take internal audit recommendations over 7 years, we've probably had 20 plus internal audits. Jocelyn, I'm making this up, but let's say they've got an average of 2 or 3 recommendations, and we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do the next thing. So from one source, there's probably 50, 60, 70 recommendations that have come through over the years. And to keep checking those up, that we've done them, would almost be an impossible task. But what we have done is when we've set out a response to internal, let's say an internal audit recommendation, we do our best to kind of almost hard code that into the way we work. God, now I've said that out loud, now I'm looking for an example, which is a bit harder to do. I'm not going to be able to come up with an example like that, but we try and hard code them into an example. Now, the whistleblowing thing was one where we said, what we'll do is we'll take the whistleblowing information that goes through the Staff Partnership Forum, and we will make sure it goes into the annual update, the workforce update that comes to the IJB. So it felt like we'd embedded it in a cycle that would then happen on an annual basis. But for whatever reason, we haven't completed that cycle. And I think once you've done it once or twice and it's built in, and somebody's saying, right, that's last year's workforce update to the IJB, and this is this year's workforce update to the IJB, generally people will look at the content. We had that in it, we had that in it, we talked about staff absences, we talked about staff turnover, we talked about whistleblowing, and when you're repeating the report the following, you'd build in the same components, because you could work out, you'd see lines that said, we had previously agreed to do this, therefore we are doing it again the next year. But somehow we haven't completed that for this one. So we do try, as we're developing the responses, to almost build them into the governance system. But that's not the same as do we check every single one up. And I mean, hopefully that kind of way of thinking about this, trying to hard code them into the governance arrangement, is the most, well, I'm not hoping it's the most practical way. I think it would be the most successful way and the most proportionate way of doing it. Clearly, we've missed something out here, but I'd like to think that that's the exception, and most of what we see does get hard-coded into the governance loop. So does that hopefully make sense? Yeah. Thanks, George.
Okay, Jill?
Yeah, I think just to follow on from that, there is a kind of spreadsheet in the background, George, of actions that we need to follow through, and we do bring that through our exec team. I think one of the things that has kind of contributed to this from a whistleblowing perspective is we focused on the workforce plan rather than a general workforce update. So I think just by changing the nature and the content of the reports coming to the IJB, that will allow us to incorporate those kind of things into future reports rather than just focusing on kind of recruitment and retention, etc., which is what the workforce plan is about.
Thanks, Jill. Jocelyn, you had your hand up there.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think it's just to add to what Sandy was saying. I would agree that administering a follow-up system is a really complex, time-consuming thing to do, really, and to keep track of those is really quite challenging. But it's just to give extra assurance that we are following up all of those recommendations again, certainly from internal audit reports within our annual report work. And our governance checklist covers a lot of the areas. So if anything's really falling through the cracks, if you like, there is a sort of a compensated control that's picking it up. So I think the two systems working in tandem are, probably are really quite effective in picking these things up. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn, for that view. Anybody else got? Nope. Okay, in that we will move on to the recommendations, which are on page 14. There's 3 of them. That it's recommended that we review and accept the finalised report and the associated appendix, review and approve the management responses to the action points highlighted in the report, and note that all responses to action points will be followed up as part of the IJB's internal audit follow-up process and reported back to the IJB at future meetings. So we're happy with these recommendations? Yes, thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 7, which is the assurances received from partners. Sandy, I'll just pass straight over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, hopefully a relatively straightforward report. As part of our governance work during this cycle from April through to now and beyond, where we're looking at things like the 2023-24 year end, we have to acknowledge that we are working with other partners, Angus Council and HST side, and Dundee and Perth and Kinross IJBs. After our audit committee of June, We shared our view of our governance arrangements with our partners. That's one of the things we've confirmed in this paper. And equally, we have sought feedback from our partners about the status of their governance arrangements for the year just concluded, because we obviously share many issues with those partners, the Angus Council and NHS Tayside in particular, but also for Dundee and Perthing and Ross regarding lead partner services. So this paper brings together the state of those assurances, which all seem okay and acceptable, certainly to me, in terms of bringing the report together. And I feel they are reflective and consistent with what we've said in our draft annual accounts that our external auditors have. And hopefully this does, I feel that this does give us the suitable reassurances from our partners. Just one small point to add, Chair, and that is the appendix in this paper, which is a draft letter from Angus Council, has now been superseded by a finalised confirmation from Angus Council regarding the state of their governance arrangements, which were all fine, and that came in after, I think, a council meeting of yesterday. Yeah, so quite current. So, Chair, I think this all feels okay, and it's another building block in terms of information we'll share with our auditors, and hopefully allows the accounts to go through smoothly at some point soon.
Thank you, Sandy. Yep, it's an important building block for the overall assurance system. There's nothing particularly controversial in it. We've got confirmation that the Council had approved the final report yesterday from Angus Council. So, has anybody got any questions about this report? Okay. Don't see any hands. Thank you. So, moving on to the recommendations. Got a few of them there. We're asked to note the position of the confirmation of the assurance from Angus Council. Note the contents of NHS Tayside's governance statement, and that it provides required assurance to Angus IJB regarding arrangements in place within NHS Tayside. Similarly for Perthing and Ross, similarly for Dundee IJB, and notes that the status of assurances received above are consistent with the contents of the IJB's governance statement in the audited annual. So, a mouthful, but we're happy with them. Thank you very much. Okay, move on to the last. Oh, sorry, the second last one. Item number 8. This is the annual internal audit plan for following year 24-25. So again, I'll pass over to Jocelyn for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just by way of background, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me feeding back. I can hear myself. Is it?
Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay, thank you. That sounds better if everyone can hear me. Yeah, okay. Okay, so just by way of background on the plan, the NHS Tayside internal audit team has provided the internal audit service for Angus IJB, including the chief internal auditor role, since March 2016, and that's been with input and support from the Angus Council internal audit team. So that arrangement will continue in 24-25 with the proposed 40-day plan provided jointly by the two teams. When we're doing the planning, we always talk about the balance of responsibilities within that plan, so that lead auditor and CIA role, the requirement to deliver annual assurances, and then the delivery of the standalone audits. So that's something I do discuss with the council internal auditors, and will continue to do so during the year, and looking forward to 25-26. So this paper sets out the proposed 24-25 plan and the updated audit charter at Appendix 1. If I may, I'll take the charter first. Members will be familiar with this document. This really sets out our responsibilities and what we'll do, and really describes our relationship with the IJB. So we have given it a bit of a revision, and we have some minor updates. Just to give you a flavour of those, We've included the FTF mission statement at Annex 1. The Charter now states that it will be reviewed annually rather than regularly, which of course is good practice. It references the Audit Committee terms of reference, which state that members will meet privately with external and internal auditors once a year. And I think that's a really important inclusion. And we have some minor wording changes to ensure that the IJB Charter aligns with the overarching internal audit framework that sets out everything FTF internal audit does. So moving on to the proposed plan, this is a risk-based plan and it's been discussed in detail with Sandy, and it's also been agreed with the Angus Council Service Leader internal audit. So as I said, it sets out the proposal of how we intend to use the 40 available days during the year. In section 4 of the paper, we describe the internal control evaluation work that provides early warning of any control issues, and the annual report work that provides year-end assurance on the overall system of internal control. So I just wanted to point out that prior to the 23-24 financial year, we only allocated 10 days to providing annual assurances. We've been providing this service for quite some time now, and during that time, the IJB's governance arrangements have really, moved on and evolved. The landscape's much more complex than it was, and where that leaves us is that really those 10 days are not enough to complete sufficient work to deliver the robust annual assurance that you need. So acknowledging that, for 24-25, we've included a more realistic 18 days, and that's covering both the ICE partway through the year and the annual report work, which leaves us the time to complete one discretionary audit. We did talk about this in great detail with Sandy in terms of the value of the ICE and the annual reports, and we came to the conclusion that that holistic assessment of the whole internal control environment really does add value, and it merits the level of resources that we've assigned to it. I'm very aware that we need to maintain audit quality as part of that assurance work, and I believe that allocation of days has to be sufficient to do that. So apart from that, I just wanted to point out the one discretionary audit we have, which is the proposed audit of lead partner services. That audit would be carried out by the Angus Council internal audit team, and we've actually got discussions ongoing at the moment with our council colleagues to see if we can make that into a Tayside-wide report. So we would have input from the Dundee IJB internal audit team and the Perth and Kinross team as well. That's really all I wanted to point out, Chair, but I think, I'm sure there will be discussion on the plan, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that. Don't see any hands up just now. Are you sure that the 18 days will be plenty?
I believe that that's a realistic allocation of days. We had 20 last year, and it was just about enough. So I think that we will look at the style of the annual report. I think the ICE is we hope to issue 2 reports and not combine them this year. I think the ICE needs to be quite a narrative kind of focused report, but I think we will discuss with Sandy, but we'll have a look at the format of the annual report and try to make that more sort of streamlined and a bit sharper, I think. But yes, I think the 18 days is enough, but any less than that, we wouldn't be able to give you the level of assurance that you need.
Thank you very much. Sandy, you've got any comments? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jocelyn, again. Yeah, so I just got a couple of observations on this report. I think the report says it, but I think it's worth just reiterating. This internal audit is about Angus IJB. It's not about the operational controls within the services we deliver through Angus Council and through NHS Tayside. They will be covered. Those operational service delivery issues will be covered through an internal audit programme associated with Angus Council and NHS Tayside. So, it has a breadth of coverage, but that doesn't include internal auditing, the delivery of services. I would agree with Jocelyn's comments about the importance of the annual internal audit report. I think it's one report that, in fact, demonstrated by this year's report that we just spoke about 15 minutes ago. It gives a good opportunity for an external view through our internal auditors of our overall governance arrangements. And I think that does need to retain quite a high level of priority, and if it requires more days to get that job done properly, as Jocelyn has described, I think that's important for us to prioritise. Of course, the downside of that is it consumes proportionally more of our overall audit plan, and we've kind of referenced that in the paper in the terms of the effectively this means less days for our discretionary audits, and that's something that I think we'll need to reflect on in terms of the medium term, not for this year, we can kind of get this all moving, but I think we'll need to reflect on how that leaves us in terms of our longer term coverage. You can see from the report also that we did talk about some other priorities in terms of governance issues we felt were maybe worth reviewing in terms of internal audit reviews, and there's reference to medicines governance there. We've got a note in here that we'll look at that potentially for 25-26, but it also, in that paragraph, which is just above section 5, it does note that this is the team that Jocelyn, or the resource that Jocelyn's report is talking about, is from HST side teams and Angus Council teams, and we just have to see how that balance works in terms of delivering specific discretionary audits. I think that's something that Jocelyn and I briefly have touched on, is maybe something that we can reflect on during the year in terms of making sure our audit plan in future years is able to cover the things that we need it to do that we need it to do. So I think I'm kind of comfortable with this plan for this year. There's just a couple of things we need to reflect on as an audit committee in terms of discretionary audits, and with our internal auditors in terms of developing future plans. I think both those things are things that we can do during the next few months before we get anywhere near our plans for 25-26. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that summary, Sandy. Has anybody got any comments in addition? No, I can't see any hands. No. Okay, then we'll move on to the recommendations on page 53. We're asked to approve the internal audit plan for 24-25 and request that the internal auditors proceed with the implementation of the approved internal audit plan and report back to the audit committee regarding progress of that plan, and that we approve the updated internal audit charter. Are we all in agreement with that? Thank you. Yes. Fine. So we'll move on to item 9, which is it's accompanied by a note. That's the 23-24 annual accounts. Well, we don't have them, so Sandy, can you give us a background to that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we knew at probably much earlier on this year, maybe February, April, that our annual accounts, which we've sometimes received at the end of August, would probably not come in at the end of August, and that has proved to be what's happened. Just to remind people, that's because our internal auditors, who also internal audit, our external auditors who also provide the external function for Angus Council, are trying to complete the Angus Council external audit before they move on to the IJB stuff. Now, I know they've been doing some work in parallel when they can, so they're already looking at some of our accounts, but they're trying to focus on one job and get that done completely before they move on to our work. We have a couple of earmarked days in the diary, 2nd of October, 30th of October, as potential dates for an IJB audit committee to deal with our annual accounts. And we don't know which date we'll need yet, but we'll come back to them as best we can. It's conceivable, just about, that we might even need to look beyond that, but I'm hopeful that won't be the case. So that's where we are. We know that our external auditors are going to be listening to the playback of today's meeting on YouTube, just to kind of keep up with where we are. It's worth me just flagging up for members here that we have had a series of smaller queries, manageable queries in our annual accounts, and there's one or two things that we're just adjusting some of our numbers about, but again, all we feel perfectly manageable, and we'll be linking in closely with our external auditors about that. So hopefully that'll all fall into place, and we can keep in touch with everybody about timings of meetings.
Thank you for that explanation, Sandy. Has anybody got any points to make? Yeah, there will be an additional meeting that will include both this item and the internal audit follow-up actions that we spoke about earlier on in the agenda. So we've been asked to just to note this position within the statement. So duly noted. Thank you. And before I move on to the date of the next meeting, I'm conscious of the fact that Nikki Worrell has put in her apologies, but it's unlikely that she will attend another meeting of the Audit Committee, so because she's moving on. So in her absence, I would like to note it and that we thank her for her contributions to the Audit Committee while she was here. Admittedly, it was a short visit, but we welcomed and valued her comments and contributions, and we wish her well in the future, whatever way she goes. So, Vicky, in your absence, thank you very much. Okay, that's it. Okay, for the date of the next meeting, item 10, the scheduled date for this committee is the 18th of December at 11:30, but we've also heard that there are two other dates, 2nd of October or 30th of October, which may be the date that we choose for the internal audit follow-up and the annual account follow-up for last year. Annual account report for last year. So keep you posted on that one. We've also got a development session scheduled for the 30th, so again, that needs to be worked around these two extra items that we need to do. Quite a lot of business to do before we actually meet again officially on the 18th of December, but thank you all very much for attending, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Hi Claire, can we stop the live stream please?